In this lecture, we're going to look at how the lookup functions work in Excel, along with some data validation and conditional formatting with some sorting and filtering. So what I'm going to do, we're going to use the lookup function to merge data given in two tables with at least one common field. We're going to try to predict the output if given a lookup statement. We're going to create a validation protocol for our data. We're going to use conditional formatting in Excel to facilitate data analysis. And we're going to use conditional formatting to apply multiple rules to create compound logic analysis. And we're going to use Excel to sort data with multiple levels of sorting. We're going to use Excel to filter data based on specified criteria. We're going to look at how the subtotal function is used to analyze filtered data. So what are lookup functions? Lookup functions enable Excel to locate information in a table. We have VLOOKUP, which searches vertically, and we have HLOOKUP that searches horizontally. So the makeup of a lookup function is VLOOKUP is our function. Your first entry is the lookup table, the lookup value. The second entry is the table you are looking it up in, and the column index is the column from which you want to retrieve information. And then lookup range is, I believe, true or false. So the lookup value is the value you are looking up. The table array is where you are looking it up. The column index is what column do you want information from based on the value that you looked up. Again, lookup value is the cell to look at that uniquely identifies the data. It's case sensitive and it must be in the first column of your table. The table array is the reference table. You be sure to use absolute references when you copy the table selection so it doesn't move. You can do whole columns or you can do whole rows. The column index is the column number containing the data to display its unique ID that counts as column 1, and it's only based on the table that we enter. So if your table has 3 columns, your column index can only be 1, 2, or 3. Actually, it can only be 2 or 3. And the lookup range is true or false. True does an approximate search. False does an exact match. 9 times out of 10, you want it to be set to false. So let's look up at an example. Assume we are given the following table of data on students. We want to determine what Sally's eye color is from column C. In column C, using cell A5, what would we type? So I want to put it in cell A5. So we would use a VLOOKUP. We're going to look for the word Sally. So we're going to look for the word Sally in our first column. Our table that we're looking stuff up in is A1 to D4, so that's this whole table. The information that we want is in column 3 because it's 1, 2, 3. Note that it doesn't include the first column with your lookup values in it. It's just the remaining columns. No, sorry, I misspoke. It's in column 1, 2, 3 because our table has 4 columns. The information we want is in column 3, and it's set to false because I wanted an exact match on Sally. Sally is in quotation marks because Sally is text. So what does data validation do? If you go to data tools, and data validation, you can add requirements for values to be typed into a cell. So I can select a range, I can select from a drop down. I can use custom formulas, I can use input messages, and I can have error pop-ups. It's kind of like how we were using input statements in input statements in MATLAB to prompt the user for information. And we can do the exact same thing in Excel. So we have an example here that has VLOOKUP and data validation. I want to choose a designation from a list, and then I want to automatically look up the information in the table. So cell R2 has data validation in it, and cells R3 and 4 are going to be using lookups. So we want to add the following table in column Q. And in our cell R2, we want to assume we use data validation to allow the user to select only the ASTM designations using a drop-down list. So we only want them to be able to drop these down. These are the only options that we want, and it's from B4 to B11. So the range of values we're going to use in our data validation are B4 to B11. We want to do, so in R3 and R4, we want to use lookup statements. In the first one, we want to look up the density based on our ASTM standard number that we pick in R2. So again, there are 4 parts to our lookup function. The first is what we are looking up, where we are looking it up, and what information we want. So what are we looking up? Well, we're looking up the ASTM designation in R2. We're looking it up in a table that consists of B4 to C11 because I'm only looking up the density. And then the value I want is in column 2 of that table, which is the density, and I want to correct my units by dividing by 1,000, and I want false. You could extend this table to be from B4 to G11 to include the entire table, but your entry would still be in column 2 of that table. So now if we want to get out the specific heat, which is in column F, what are we going to do? Well, we're still looking up the value in R2. This time I've extended my table to go from B to F. And my information is in column 5 because it's in column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what am I looking up? Where am I looking it up? What is the answer what information do I want from what column? So I go over here, I find my ASTM standard, I go over to column 5, and that is my answer. What does conditional formatting do? Conditional formatting changes the font and background color based on values that you enter. You can find it on Home, Styles, Conditional Formatting. Your cell referencing rules still apply, so I can format cells that are less than 25 in a custom format. I can change their color, their font, their text. So say we want to color some data that has ping times for cell phones, if it's in 10 different servers in a network. If it is greater than or equal to 100 milliseconds, this is greater than or equal to in Excel. We're going to go into that next week when we go over logic. I want it to be a red background with white text. If it's greater than or equal to 500 and less than 1,000, I want it yellow with black bold text. And if it's less than 500, I want it to default formatting of the text. So what I would do, I would select my range, which is B5 to B14 in my Excel sheet. I would go to Home, Styles, Conditional Formatting, Manage Rules. I want to create a new rule. I want to select Format Only cells that contain the type as. I want to set my rule, I want to set my formatting. So if I set my rule, if it's greater than or equal to 1,000, do this. If I do that each time I'm going to create my rules, I'm going to have my values be red and yellow for the ranges that I selected. So this is useful for indicating data that is outside of the realm of what you want for a desired range. So what does sorting and filtering do? What do we do if you want to sort data or make only display certain data? So we can use the sort and filtering options, which allow you to sort by different column headers, sort on values in your order. So assume I want to sort a list alphabetically by make and then smallest to largest by annual fuel cost. I would select all of my data. The first thing I want to do is I want to sort by make. I want to sort values on A to Z, and then I want to sort by annual cost and then smallest to largest. So this is very useful if you want to do multi-level sorting and not just a simple sort of smallest to largest or A to Z on a single column. To only display some data, what you can do is select the header on each row. When you turn on sorting and filtering, the headers get little drop down arrows next to them. If you click on that and expand it, it has the different ranges displayed over here. You can select all, or you can select certain values to be displayed. When you're selecting certain values to be displayed, you have to be very careful because your functions are going to stop working. It's because filtering does not affect calculations. There is a special function in Excel that works with filtering. It's called the subtotal function. It will recalculate your expressions based on a filtered list, and the inputs for that function are subtotal is your function number and then the range. So function number is the number for built-in functions. They're in table 710 that will be posted. The cell is your cell range. So for example, if I want the average of C5 to C11, ignore this. The average function will corresponds to number 1, so the resulting calculation in cell C13 using subtotal is going to be the subtotal 1, so I'm saying do the average of C5 to C11, so it will recalculate it when you filter out information where the average function will not. So that's it to sum up some basic functions in Excel and basic how does Excel work with formatting. Next week we're going to move on to logic in Excel, and after we've mastered logic in Excel, we're going to look at how logic in MATLAB is used.